She didn't look like the other models. In fact, when Kristen McMenamy first stepped onto the runway, many in the fashion world weren't sure what to make of her. Her look was strange by industry standards, sharp, unusual features, and later, famously, no eyebrows at all. She wasn't the polished beauty designers usually chased. And yet, somehow, that became her power. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Kristen walked in and tore up the rulebook. But it wasn't easy. In the early days, Kristen was told to change. Grow her hair out. Be softer. Be more commercial. She heard the word no more times than she could count. Agents doubted her. Designers overlooked her. The industry wasn't ready for someone who didn't fit the mold. And still, she stayed. She pushed back. With every rejection, Kristen only became bolder. She didn't chase the trends, she became the trend. And the fashion world slowly started paying attention. Behind the runway lights and magazine covers was a woman who turned defiance into beauty, and rebellion into art. Kristen's transformation from an outsider to an icon wasn't just about changing her look, it was about changing how the world defines beauty itself. And she did it not by conforming, but by being unapologetically herself. But what was the moment that changed everything? When did the fashion world finally stop and stare, and why? The truth behind her breakthrough will surprise you. Because for Kristen, success didn't come with acceptance, it came with a bold decision that stunned everyone and redefined what a supermodel could be. Stay with us, because the story of how Kristen McMenamy made fashion history is just getting started, and it's nothing like you've ever heard. Before she became a fashion legend, Kristen McMenamy was just another name on a long list of hopeful models, another young woman trying to make it in an industry that didn't know what to do with her. Born in Pennsylvania in the 1960s, Kristen was quiet, observant, and different. She didn't grow up dreaming of runways or photo shoots. Modeling wasn't the obvious path. But something about her presence, something raw and intense, caught the attention of a small agency. Still, even with a foot in the door, Kristen didn't fit the mold. In the late 80s and early 90s, supermodels looked a certain way, tall, glowing, traditionally beautiful. Think Cindy Crawford, Claudia Schiffer, Naomi Campbell, the classic beauties. Kristen, with her angular features and haunting eyes, didn't match that image. In fact, she was often told she looked weird or too harsh for mainstream campaigns. But there was a quiet fire in her, something no casting agent could quite measure. Even when doors shut in her face, she didn't disappear. She kept showing up, camera-ready and unapologetically herself. Behind the scenes, she was watching, learning, noticing the cracks in the perfect surface of the fashion world. She began to realize that beauty wasn't just about appearance, it was about presence. Energy. Fearlessness. And if she couldn't change how she looked, she'd change how people looked at her. Then, something shifted. Kristen made a bold decision that would set her apart forever. At a time when image was everything, she shaved off her eyebrows. No one told her to do it. No designer demanded it. It was her choice, completely her own. And in that one act, she declared herself not just a model, but a force. It was strange. It was uncomfortable. And it was unforgettable. But did it work? That's what everyone wondered. Some thought she'd ruined her chances for good. Others were intrigued but cautious. No one quite knew what to make of this woman who had taken such a drastic step, not to fit in, but to stand out even more. What happened next didn't just shock the industry, it would forever change the way fashion saw power, beauty, and the courage to be different. And Kristen wasn't done yet. Kristen's decision to shave her eyebrows wasn't just about making a statement, it was a turning point. Suddenly, people were watching. Fashion insiders whispered, photographers stared, and casting directors either turned her away instantly or couldn't stop looking. She had become polarizing. Some brands called her look alien, others saw genius. Either way, she was impossible to ignore. But with that visibility came pressure. Kristen was no longer just battling for space in an industry that resisted change, she was now representing a new idea of beauty, one that made many uncomfortable. Her rise wasn't smooth. Even as major fashion houses started calling, the reactions were mixed. One designer praised her fearlessness, another demanded she grow her brows back before a campaign. She refused. That decision cost her work. But Kristen didn't back down. She walked into casting rooms with that same blank, powerful stare, challenging the very people who once dismissed her. Some photographers embraced her transformation. They saw not just a model, but a story, a mood, something deeper than just surface-level beauty. Others, stuck in the past, thought she was being difficult or trying too hard. In truth, she was just being herself. Meanwhile, in the background, there was another battle happening, a quieter, internal one. Kristen had stepped into the spotlight, but that spotlight was harsh. Critics talked about her look, but rarely about her talent or her presence. Her confidence was real, but it had to be constantly rebuilt. She carried herself like she didn't care what others thought, but behind the cameras, the weight of judgment never fully left. Being different wasn't easy. It meant always walking a fine line between art and rejection. Around this time, a new wave of models started appearing. More unconventional, more expressive. Kristen wasn't alone anymore, but she wasn't completely accepted either. She had cracked open the door, but was the fashion world truly ready to walk through it? There were whispers of change, campaigns with strange lighting and fierce faces, but the old standards still loomed large. Kristen kept pushing, show after show, shoot after shoot. But the real question lingered, how far could she go before the industry tried to silence her again? The answer would come soon, and it wouldn't be quiet. The fashion world was shifting, but not fast enough. Kristen McMenamy stood in the middle of that slow storm, neither fully embraced nor fully rejected. She was everywhere, and yet somehow still on the outside. Even as she appeared on the covers of top fashion magazines and walked for the biggest designers in the world, there was always a quiet question following her. Was this success real, or was she just a trend? Every runway walk felt like a test. Every photo shoot came with judgment. She wasn't just modeling clothes, she was modeling an idea, a challenge to beauty norms. And not everyone liked being challenged. Some critics said she was ruining fashion's fantasy. Others claimed she was ahead of her time. But none could deny her presence. She wasn't disappearing. Then came the campaign that changed everything. A major designer, one who had once passed her up, wanted her as the face of an upcoming high-profile collection. It was strange, dramatic, full of surreal shapes and wild energy. In many ways, it felt like it had been designed for her. Kristen said yes. She stepped into that campaign with everything she had, no fear, no apologies. But what she didn't know was that this shoot wouldn't just define her career, it would test everything she believed about herself, about the industry, and about how far a person can go without giving in. What happened next would shake the very foundation of fashion, and finally force the world to answer the question it had been avoiding for years. ChatGPT said, the photo shoot was intense from the moment Kristen walked onto the set. The mood was heavy, almost cinematic. The creative team had transformed the studio into a surreal dreamscape, dim lighting, twisted structures, exaggerated silhouettes. It was bold and strange, exactly the kind of vision Kristen had always gravitated toward. For once, it felt like the world was catching up to her. She moved through each frame like a force of nature, every pose sharp, raw, unapologetic. The cameras clicked, the room went silent, and everyone seemed to know they were witnessing something rare. But just days before the campaign was set to launch, everything changed. The fashion house pulled the ad. There was no official explanation, just quiet whispers that filtered through agents and assistants. Some said the final images were too risky. Others claimed the brand's investors got cold feet. But behind closed doors, the real reason started to surface. Kristen's look had once again been labeled too extreme for mainstream markets. Despite delivering exactly what was asked of her, despite pouring herself into every moment of the shoot, her presence was being erased. Again. This time, it cut deeper. The campaign had been more than just another job. It was supposed to be her full-circle moment, the one where the industry finally acknowledged her not just as a trendsetter, but as a lasting icon. Instead, she found herself staring at a silence that felt too familiar. She had pushed boundaries, opened doors, inspired a new generation, and somehow still wasn't enough for the people who claimed to want change. Then came the second blow. One of the younger models from the shoot, a rising star with a more conventional look, was quietly promoted as the face of the collection. Her style was inspired by Kristen's, her poses nearly identical, but her image was more accessible. The brand released a limited campaign featuring her instead. Kristen's photos were shelved. This wasn't just about a single campaign being pulled. It was about something bigger, how the industry still borrowed from women like Kristen, used their energy, their edge, their originality, and then replaced them with safer versions. It was a pattern she had seen before, but this time, it was more calculated. It wasn't about rejection anymore. It was about being erased after already doing the work. Kristen didn't go silent. But she didn't scream either. She began working on something quietly, something outside of the usual runway and campaign circuits. Fashion might not have given her the full recognition she deserved, but she still had a voice, and a vision that couldn't be edited out. What she did next would stun not just the fashion world, but a global audience. Because Kristen McMenamy wasn't finished, and her most powerful statement was still to come. In the months that followed, Kristen McMenamy disappeared from the spotlight. No runway appearances. No interviews. No editorials. The fashion world assumed she'd quietly stepped away. Some even whispered that the pulled campaign had broken her spirit. But behind the scenes, Kristen was working, just not in the way anyone expected. She wasn't trying to get back into someone else's vision. She was building her own. Without warning, Kristen announced her return. Not through her most striking image? A massive projection of the very campaign that had been shelved, each shot glowing larger than life across gallery walls. People came in droves. Models, designers, critics, students. Everyone who had once judged her, dismissed her, or silently watched her struggles. Just weeks after the exhibit's closing, one of the world's top fashion houses revealed that Kristen would be leading their next season, not as a model, but as creative director. It was the same industry that had tried to sideline her, now placing her at the helm. The outsider had become the decision-maker. Kristen didn't change herself to fit fashion. She changed fashion to fit truth. And in the end, her greatest power wasn't in her look, but in her refusal to disappear. As Kristen McMenamy stepped into her new role as creative director, she didn't just bring bold ideas, she brought something the fashion world had long ignored: honesty. She knew the feeling of being excluded, of having your look questioned, your worth doubted. So she built a space where difference was celebrated, not tolerated. Under her direction, campaigns featured models of all backgrounds, ages, and appearances. Beauty wasn't filtered anymore. It was fierce, flawed, and fully human. The same industry that once called her too strange now praised her vision. Young models who had once looked up to her from a distance were finally walking into a world she had helped make possible. And Kristen, now in her 50s, wasn't trying to reclaim youth, she was proving that relevance doesn't fade with age, especially when it's built on substance. The rejection she faced early in her career, the silence after that shelved campaign, the pain of being replaced, all of it became fuel. She didn't seek revenge. She chose reinvention. And by doing that, she rewrote what it meant to succeed in fashion. No longer just the face on the cover, she became the mind behind the movement. Her story became more than just about modeling. It became a lesson in resilience. A reminder that sometimes the very things people criticize are the ones that make you unforgettable. Kristen showed that being different isn't a weakness, it's a gift, if you have the courage to own it. And in the end, she didn't just survive the fashion world. She shaped it. What began as a struggle to be seen ended with a legacy that will inspire generations to come. Kristen McMenamy didn't fit into fashion's old rules, she broke them, rebuilt them, and proved that real beauty lies in staying true to yourself, even when the world tells you not to.